Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. This is episode 439. We're recording this on Friday, the 18th of October. Yes, folks, Christmas is coming. We record this normally at 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. You can watch it live on Facebook on the WP-Tonic Facebook page. We got a small but powerful panel. The others have truanted from the school. I don't know what they're doing. But Sallie, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Certainly. My name is Sallie Goetsch. I am the WP fangirl and the organizer of the East Bay WordPress Meetup in Oakland, California, and the devoted subject of two cats.
Meow. And we got Joe. Joe, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, my name's Joe Casabona. I create online courses for how to build websites. I'm a diehard Yankee fan, which it's been a tough week for that. And I'm happy to be back after a couple of weeks being away.
Yes, he's been traveling. He's been to Carpo and other places and sampling cigars with Chris Lemmer. Sounds a tough life, doesn't it? Listeners, viewers, doesn't it? Rob, before we go into the main topics we're going to discuss this week, I want to mention one of our great sponsors, and that's Breezely, Breezely.co. Breezely is one of the most innovative page builders on the market at the present moment, in my opinion. They've just done some major updates that make them even more interesting. Especially if you're a hardcore developer or implementer and you're looking for something that's got a fantastic UX design and easy for your clients to use, I suggest that you should go over to breezy.com and have a look what they've got to offer. If you do that, and please do, please also mention that you heard about them from the WP-Tonic show. So let's go into the first story. Mark Davies joins Automattic as Chief Financial Officer. But no, it could be exciting. Joe, got any comments about this? And please do, because we're going to have a problem if you haven't.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm guessing that this was probably contingent on Automattic taking Salesforce money, right? They probably said, we're handing you a giant pile of money. Now you need to figure out how to manage it appropriately. And this is things that are contingent upon a lot of VC stuff, right? Google was forced to hire Eric Schmidt after they got a bunch of VC funding and stuff like that. And I think it's probably a good thing. I'm always curious about the economics of Automattic. I know they make money with Jetpack. I know they make money with their premium stuff and with some other small products, but like they also have a grand meetup every year where like the company shuts down essentially for a week. They fly every employee to a single spot, and that ain't cheap.
No.
Well, the VIP service, I think, brings them a fair pile of cash.
So I would have thought that too, but well, I shouldn't. How much of this can I say? So I worked with the VIP program.
You come on the show.
Dish.
Yep. Well, I worked with the VIP program a year ago, and I'll say that they are a self-sustaining business unit that's part of Automattic, right? So like Automattic gets the VC funding, but generally, from what I understand, VIP is in charge of managing their own funds and things like that. So I'm sure it does bring them in quite a bit of money. I don't actually know any numbers. This is just from what I've gleaned. Like I haven't been told any of this explicitly. But
you need to say I heard it from secondary sources.
Yeah, right.
The saying in some of the newspapers that Stefan and I joke about is according to sources familiar with the story.
Yes,
exactly. You got to get the terminology right, Joe.
The source in this case is only tangentially familiar with certain stories. So.
All right, that's them telling you. All right. How dare you mention us? It's a private company, isn't it? Automattic. They don't, and in America you don't have to publish your. See, in Britain, if you're a limited liability company, but not public, you still have to publish your accounts at a place called Company House, and you can go to a website and see how much they were making or not. But you can't do that here, can you, Sallie?
No, you can't.
No. So what's your comments about this, Sallie?
I really don't know anything about the guy, but I trust and certainly hope that, he's competent, that he is familiar with managing, these amounts of cash and helping to ensure that the company stays on track. My experience of CFOs is that's usually who the IT department has to report to, because IT is always considered a cost center. But there does need to be somebody there.
Do you think Matt's going to have to give him his monthly expense reports?
I think if he does his job, Matt will have to answer to him in some way, shape, or form.
Right. It depends how much Matt pays for out of his personal income.
Right.
You should have got budget flight, Matt. Not that private jet. I bet that's going to go down well, isn't it? Did you have to stay at that hotel at US camp? I bet that go down well. I've been sarcastic there, but I think it's going to be an interesting relationship, isn't it? It's going to be interesting for Matt, isn't it?
Well, I'm sure this whole whatever is coming next is going to be interesting and something of an adventure, and how much the specific identity of the CIO will matter in that, I have no idea.
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes going on at Automattic lately, and they've made, I think, what was a good acquisition for them with WooCommerce subscriptions. I think that, Prospress, right? They do more than just subscriptions. And I'm sure we'll see that integrate into Jetpack. Tumblr, it sounds like they got that for a song. Like they got that for, the equivalent
fire sale.
Yeah, exactly. Like a couple $100 for me or you. But between all the changes and now bringing this new CFO on, I think we're probably going to see the next kind of evolution of what happens with Automattic. And I mean, the goal of any of this VC funding stuff, right, is to sell, like exit, right, or to go public. I have a really hard time seeing Automattic go public, because that means that the CEO is beholden to a board and to shareholders, and I have a really hard time seeing that. So I'm interested to see what shakes out in the next year.
Yeah, the only way they might do it is that it's broken down even more into different units and broken up into different companies. You could see that, couldn't you? But that's pure, I'm just looking at the tea leaves, basically. I've got no knowledge.
Right. Well, VCs want money. They don't really care what your company does to get it, whether it's, public or private or anything else. They just want to make a big fat profit in a fairly short period of time.
Yes, that's right. Let's go on to the other story. Number 2, LinkedIn gets physical. Disputes events hub for people to plan impersonal networking events. And it's linked to another story that I think, Sallie, I want you to talk about as well. So do you want to take over this one, Sallie?
Sure. So last week, there was a bit of a flap with Meetup.com as they started spreading around an announcement about basically charging organizers $2 per person for people to RSVP to free events. So this prompted a considerable outrage, and it was not going to affect the meetups that were part of the WordPress community program, because that's a pro account, and it had said that wasn't affected. But there was massive outrage and anxiety, and a lot of people talking about, should WordPress be changing platforms? It's sort of right in the middle of this that I saw this news story in a Slack group I subscribe to for PR professionals, and they're like, look, it's the return of the tweet up. And I thought, the timing on this is really interesting, that although what LinkedIn is doing, according to this story, is basically making it easier for you to create an event and invite the people who are your direct contact. So it's not really the same as Meetup, but the timing was interesting.
Well, they should really go. It's a natural thing for them to compete with them on, really, isn't it? If I was in LinkedIn, it's a natural in a way, in some ways.
Well, it does. I mean, it's a networking tool, and so to add, to make it easier to do in-person networking does seem like a fairly natural outgrowth of that. And it could be something that, works out for them. It's still apparently fairly experimental and limited in its release, and they'll, I suppose, see what happens to it and how well it develops.
Well, in general, LinkedIn, obviously, when it got bought out by Microsoft, and then they bought out Lynda, and it's become LinkedIn Training. And I'm interested in training. Joe's interested in training. You do some training as well, Sallie. But when it comes to LinkedIn, I'm not sure if there is a master plan, or they're just throwing stuff on the wall and seeing if it sticks. Because every time I log in, it's not quite there, but it looks more and more like a kind of Facebook clone, doesn't it? They're trying to get more people to stay longer.
I wouldn't know, because I don't use Facebook.
Of course, I forgot about that. You want to keep yourself clean, don't you? You're not going to reply to that. All right, but it'll be like that. Joe, I like people like that. I'm not going in. Joe, what did you think?
Yeah, I think as Sallie said, the timing is pretty interesting, considering like WeWork is having trouble and Meetup. There was a lot of outrage. I was initially like, if we're talking about Meetup, I was like initially like, this is dumb. Like they definitely want people to like leave the platform, I think, or they're trying to inflate because WeWork is trying to sell Meetup. And then I thought, how many people RSVP to free Meetup events just to not show up, right? Like $2 is skin in the game, at least. So I thought that was an interesting outlook. That's neither here nor there, though. This is about LinkedIn. And I like this move, right? Because they're doing a lot of things for professionals, right? You hear a lot of people in the tech space, myself included, go, I hate LinkedIn. And I teach for LinkedIn Learning right now, so my opinion of LinkedIn has kind of changed since I joined the team.
I would never say I hated it. It was when it was
I would say that.
Yeah. Why did you hate it?
I just thought it was, people like, it was not anything LinkedIn did per se, but like recruiters would reach out and say like, hey, we need a math teacher, and I think you'd be great at teaching math. And I'd be like, what makes you think that? Like, I'm really bad at math. So like, it was like that.
You got a cheerful face and a nice person there. Maybe they just wanted to chat, Joe.
Yeah. So that sort of stuff, like that cold outreach recruiter stuff, that was very untargeted. I didn't like that. But like, I feel like, I just listened to a podcast, to Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income podcast with Don Miller, and he said something very interesting. He's the Build a Story brand guy. He said something interesting about what happens if you offer like 25 products, right? Then you need to put an umbrella statement on all of your products. He used Dave Ramsey as an example. Financial piece is the thread that moves through all of his stuff, all of his products. And I would say for LinkedIn, it's probably resources for professionals, or connecting professionals, or making you more professional, something like that, right? So you have LinkedIn, the general social network where people share information. But you have LinkedIn Learning for training, and then you have the Meetup stuff, which is, I think, like putting these networking events together with people you're already connected to, really good, because you can kind of control the type of people who are coming to your events, and you're not just inviting like the charlatans who are trying to just give their card to everybody, or the person who like needs help with their Facebook page, even though this is like a WordPress meetup, right?
Yeah, because in some ways they wanted, it was publicly rumored they want increased engagement and time spent on the platform, like all these social platforms. but they won't go that last stage where when they're in fundamentally kind of cloning Facebook, where you can post comments on people's directly. They don't. But I wonder why they won't go that final step, because that's what in some ways that's a business kind of.
Well, you can comment on some things in LinkedIn.
Can you?
When people write like sort of blog post sorts of things, you can. I don't
and
see
stories.
a ton of comments on it, but
yeah, if you post links, if you post links or blog post type things that people can comment, and you can react now. They added reactions where you can clap or like or be happy or be sad or whatever. Like they rolled out. It's very Facebook. It's like it's like the same way. It's like
there's nothing wrong with that.
WordPress,
I think that could be a good business model, could it?
Yeah. I think the way you get in, like linked, it's all about the algorithm with these social networks. And I think LinkedIn's algorithm is a bit different from Facebook's. And I have no idea. I have no idea how either work, but I have less of an idea of how LinkedIn's work, right? Because I share stories. I don't get a lot of engagement. Maybe I'm not sharing the right stories, or maybe it's because they're like auto posted, or I don't know. I haven't looked deeply into LinkedIn, but I think if you're doing LinkedIn right, it's probably good. Like it's probably fruitful for the people who are putting the time into it.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit puzzling. All right, on to the next story. But that's life. It is puzzling, isn't it? What you think is going to be a winner isn't. What you think is useless normally turns into a winner. Postmortem on Gutenberg launch, so we can embrace Gutenberg, the product. I've left the T off. That's not very good. I think it is. So, Sallie, what did you think of this one?
I thought it was very well done. That what the author is pointing out is that there are a bunch of people who were sufficiently upset by the mistakes made in introducing Gutenberg at the end of last year that they just won't have anything to do with it, and that this is that Gutenberg as a tool for publishing has been improving substantially, including addressing a number of the accessibility issues that were one of the really big problems with the way it was brought out, and that really it's time to stop sulking about what went wrong, and actually say, hey, this is a useful tool that's becoming more usable, and so it's worth reading the article. It's a long article, which it does warn you in the beginning, 16-minute read, and that's for somebody like me who reads fast. But I think it's very well considered.
I don't think it's down to my dyslexia, but I think it's just generally because I view everything on the web. I've become a total scannerizer. Is there such a word like that, Sallie? What I mean by is I hardly read anything properly. I just scan the headlines, scan the beginning and end, and it's become worse and worse as I read most of the stuff on the web.
Well, most people read that way on the web, which is why they advise you to use lots of bullet lists and subheadings and things to help people who are just skimming over stuff to get a sense of it. I think we all feel kind of pressured to do that because there is so much stuff that we have to take in.
Yes, but I got to admit, I've tried to be a bit more pragmatic about Gutenberg, but on the other hand, it seemed something that was pushed out. It seemed to take forever, and then it was pushed out the door in a kind of very rapid way, and it didn't seem to be quite finished. But and I've left it, and I haven't really, most of the clients either have the traditional text editor or they're using something like Elementor or some page builder. But I've just had a major client do a major revamp, and they're one of my major clients, and they're one of the few clients that's based near to where I live, and I had to go to their headquarters, and they want me to help them with the transference of a lot of stuff, me and my team, from their old website to their new website, and they're going to be using Gutenberg. So I was forced to start because they want me to show them how to use it. I don't use it. So I started really delving into it. And I got to say, I really like it. I
like it a lot.
I really do.
I've been all Gutenberg all the time for months. And, I find using it in a lot of ways easier than using something like Beaver Builder or Elementor.
It is. It's a nice interface. I think they've done quite a nice job, actually. I was pleasantly surprised, actually. What do you reckon, Joe?
Well, if you need a course that you need to license on how to use Gutenberg for your clients, Jonathan.
Yeah.
I know somebody.
Talk to Joe. He can hook you up.
So I've been using Gutenberg essentially since Matt announced at WordCamp US. I guess it's about 2 years ago now. Zach Gordon encouraged me to look into it and make a user course, be the first to market, etc. And so I've seen it evolve considerably. But I was also super vocal around this time last year about the rushed rollout.
Yeah, that's what peeved. The way it was it was not the actual core thing. It was all the baggage around it that peeved off.
Right, and I don't think anybody disputes that was badly done. But we shouldn't just get stuck there.
We've got to be honest. It wasn't Matt's most glorious moment, was it?
But he wanted to make it his glorious moment, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't want to beat up on Matt. I've talked to Matt. I like Matt. But not to tap the SPI Don Miller podcast episode again, but he said something again I think that resonates here, which is you can have a great product, but if your messaging is wrong, then it's going to fail. And I think that's what happened with the initial rollout of Gutenberg. And I hope that this article, which is long but well written, and presents a lot of good information, I hope it starts to heal that process, because especially new users think it's leaps and bounds better than the classic editor. So I'm using it pretty much everywhere. And if I need to build a landing page, sure, I'll use Beaver Builder. If I just want to put regular content out there, I'm going to use Gutenberg. Or the block editor.
Gutenberg makes pretty good landing pages, actually.
Yep. So I need to revisit, I guess, but the thing that I was missing the most was kind of the full width kind of impact areas. But
there are 5 million block plugins that let you do that and style them and so on.
Or one page builder plugin that lets me do that.
I think one of the problems is that I've been very, a lot of my bigger clients or things I've been involved in on the WP-Tonic, either use Beaver Builder, but I've love Beaver Builder and I use it on my Tonic site, but I've been involved in a couple other projects and I've been using Elementor heavily, and it's a bit of a beast. There's a lot to it, and I've just got myself engrossed in Elementor, all about Elementor, and over the past 6 months, I think I'm advanced user now. So kind of Gutenberg's been on the sideline until this big client, So, but I was pleasantly surprised. So what I'm saying, Joe, one of the problems, it's all a bit fragmented, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and you have those camps, right? You have those people who tried it early and didn't like it and assumed it didn't change. And then you have the new users, right? And I mean, maybe we'll talk about this more in 5.3 because I'm running the release candidate on one of my sites. But first impression, they say first impressions are everything, and if you get a bad first impression, you're less likely to want to go back to it. So again, I think the block editor is really great to do all sorts of things, right? From basic content to landing pages, as Sallie pointed out. But I think it's time to revisit. We're almost a year after the initial launch. There have been strides in accessibility. There have been strides in user interface cleanup. And I will say, of all of these kind of interactive editors, the block editor and the Gutenberg plugin, those work the best on touchscreens. I'm not saying they work completely, but you can do things that like are impossible in Beaver Builder or Elementor.
Well, that's, yeah. I don't, well, I will be finding out more about Gutenberg. I will be reporting back to you, listeners and viewers, over the months. My Gutenberg reports. So we're going to go for our break. We've got a small panel this week, but actually I've been enjoying the conversation. It's a bit more relaxed, actually. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. I just want to mention about one of my other great sponsors, and that is obviously Kinster. Kinster, the reason I want to mention it in the round table show is I've been speaking to a couple of the key people in Kinster, and they said, can you give us an additional plug, because we've increased the speed of our hosting by almost 200%. We've got new Google technology, blah, blah, blah. And it looks fantastic, folks. You know, they were pretty quick as it was anyway, compared to a number of unnamed so-called specialized WordPress hosting providers. But they're doing the business. So if that's interesting for yourself or for your clients, go over to kinster.com, look at their mega quick hosting packages, and also mention you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. So on to story 4. Oh my God, yes. Mark, my friend Mark Zuckerberg will stream a speech on free expression on Thursday. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time on Thursday to watch it. I will watch it probably over the weekend or listen to it.
Yes, well, I find that it's interesting that the Engadget article, which was the original story that you put in there, right now, if you go to that page, says AOL. We'll be right back.
Well, I managed to get back up again, but yes, I got that as well.
Right. I mean, there is a story I saw in the New York Times that then reports on the speech, and apparently the impressive invocation of American traditions of freedom. In his winding 35-minute speech at Georgetown University's Gaston Hall, Mr. Zuckerberg fought back against the idea that the social network needed to be an arbiter of speech. To make his case, Mr. Zuckerberg invoked Frederick Douglass, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., the Vietnam War, and the First Amendment.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah. Yeah, it makes me especially glad I didn't listen to it. I'm sure I would have lost my appetite entirely.
I've got such mixed feelings about Facebook and the stories I've been running during 2019. In some ways, it's a bit linked to Gutenberg and Matt and the just general hand. In some ways, I think you know, the everything that was said about Russiagate, about how they used Facebook to manipulate their American elections. I just thought it was total bullshit of the highest order. And a lot of the other criticism of Facebook, I think it's compared to what other people are getting up to, that triggered off a kind of, I don't know how to explain it last week. I went off on a kind of digital Barney, did I, Sally? Kind of it brought out the worst out of me. But compared to some players, but I think the main problem with Facebook is...
So is this like the... well, if you compare Mussolini to Hitler...
Yeah, kind of like that a little bit. But what I meant was, I think Mark and his upper team they're in this startup mentality, which leads to a PR disaster zone. Absolute, the way they handle criticism or anything, it just seems to bring out the worst of them. Because I think it's just because the prospect of lowering profitability, that's what it's about. What do you reckon, Jade? Am I waffling, or is there anything to what I'm saying?
I think what's going to be an unpopular opinion here. But I agree with Mark Zuckerberg. And let's look at it from a different angle, right? We also, in the last couple of weeks, we saw what happens to private companies when they support somebody at odds with China. The NBA is basically kowtowing to China, like, oh, we're really sorry we annoyed you. And so we're seeing what happens when a government gives themselves the ability to stifle free speech. David French, who's I guess more conservative. I shouldn't say more conservative. He's more conservative than like the center, but he's not more conservative than like super conservatives. He wrote for the National Review, but he talks about how in situations like this, we need public correction and not private censorship. And I keep thinking a lot about that, right? Because I was involved in a WordCamp last year where half of the organizing team was going to leave because DreamHost was a global sponsor and DreamHost was hosting a neo-Nazi site, and they didn't believe that they should be allowed to be a global sponsor. And I was one of the few people who were like, if they're not putting individuals directly in danger, if they're not breaking the law, then I don't think it's up to DreamHost or any hosting.
No, I would agree, because where does it? You know, it's not my.
Yeah, I think some of it is the ambiguity about whether Facebook is a media platform and has some of the responsibilities that a newspaper or another media platform should have about accuracy, or whether it is like a place in which people talk to each other. Because I don't think our private speech to one another should be censored. But a lot of what is happening with Facebook is it's not so much this is your individual right to speak, but this is your this is the right of the people who can pay for ads to speak. And is there do there need to be any kinds of disclaimers to the effect of like, this is an ad. It is not a news item. These are the opinions of the politician who brought them here. And, politicians, you should fact check anything they say.
Yeah. And that's certainly a concern, right? Is like how much ads on Google too, like how much ads look like actual in feed or in search results items. So I would definitely agree with you there that at the very least, like promoted posts or ads should be very clearly defined. And that probably doesn't behoove Facebook to do that, right? Because you're going to lower interaction with those ads, and then people are going to get charged less money or whatever. I think the question about whether Facebook is like a media company or if it's just a place for people to hang out and talk, I think that is an interesting discussion, because we see media companies take a lot of liberties with the news. I'll mention both sides of the aisle, right? Sean Hannity says basically whatever he wants to know, and barely gets fact checked at all. And then on the other side, a couple weeks ago we saw, was it MSNBC published a story from like a single source, and they were like, this is Donald Trump has a Russian fund or whatever it was. And Rachel Maddow was just like, really? Like, please tell me more. This is the narrative I want. And then they had to walk it back like 12 hours later. So I think all of that stuff is.
I remember when there was a thing called journalistic integrity.
I barely remember.
Well, when you get paid, $10 million a year, you seem to forget about that, don't you?
Yeah.
That's gone, mate.
Yeah.
Just give me the check.
Give me the check. Yeah. So that was a bit of a tangent, but I think Zuckerberg made an interesting point about how like the internet gives everybody a voice. And so there are a lot more voices that we need to hear, right? It's not just our crazy uncle on Christmas Eve now who's saying Obama's going to start World War III so he could be president again. Yeah. Something my uncle actually said. It's
he's been talking to my mother, has he?
It's stuff that we have to see on these social networks like Facebook and Twitter.
It's a bit like I watch some of RT's stuff, right? And and there is a considerable difference between Outlook and my approach to content that comes from RT, that comes from Moscow, from their studios and from their correspondents who are based in Moscow. You know, also any story that encroaches to some degree on the foreign interests of the Russian government, it's not particularly handled with any critical insight by RT. Surprise, surprise. But some of their stuff, you know, especially their independent American based, not exactly called, their self-employed presenters or shows. Some of it I find it really quite interesting, but but it's not secret. Is, you know, RT is totally funded by the Russian government. You know, so
well, you might gather that from the name of the network.
Yeah, you can do RT, Russian TV. You know, but the idea that the BBC is totally independent from the British government is a total lie. The BBC have peddled that since its existence. The truth is that British media, to a medium, sometimes a very high level, is manipulated indirectly or very directly by the British government. So it's not that. So the idea, and you know, a lot of the, especially television in America, it's run by very large corporations that also have very large divisions that make weaponry and make enormous profits from building weaponry. So are you really on these channels going to see any real criticism of the American defense budget? Not really. Is that surprising? Not really. You know, so I think a lot of, you know, I think what reason why I'm pointing this out is I just think people to some degree have been a little bit naive. What do you reckon, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, right? I think about this all the time because I don't like news bias either way. You know, I try to read a lot of different sources. I try to get the whole story or try to find the primary source. And that's a lot of work. That's more work than most people are willing to do. So on the one hand, we have these independent media companies here in the United States who are definitely not connected to the government, but then they still peddle the viewpoint that they want, right? Fox News started because they felt the media was too liberal. And now Fox News a few years ago dropped their fair and balanced tagline because it was a complete joke. And then if we look at other countries, right, where BBC, which is it government subsidized? Like,
well, it gets some, but it mostly gets its money. This is going to be a bizarre thing for my beloved listeners and viewers in America. If you own a TV set and you watch, watch terrestrial television,
you have to get a license.
You got to get a license. Like it's like $200 a year.
I didn't have a television, so I didn't have to get one, but I remember them coming knocking on the door. Asking.
Oh, they come after people as well if you don't pay. They're quite vicious, actually. Got a little army of little snoopers, actually, Joe. But no, that's how it's. But obviously, how much this goes up, how much it will go up by every year, is highly controlled by the government. So, you know,
So point being, right? The BBC, if they're getting money from the government, I would find it very hard to want to trust that they're not peddling the message of whatever government. If Adrian was here, he would be saying the same thing about Canadian television, right? He and I were talking about that when we were together a couple of weeks ago. And to bring it back to the kind of title of this show, I think that the whole democratizing publishing thing, right, using WordPress and being able to give more voices to people does help with that, but it is a little bit of a double-edged sword. So I think the solution is to educate people on how to kind of verify, right? Trust but verify, maybe distrust.
Well, I think
also
you got to be,
verify.
as an adult, you got to be aware that if somebody's sending a message to you, there's a reason.
Right.
They're peddling something to you.
Yeah.
Everybody on the web, everybody's got a personal agenda, and everybody's trying to peddle
Right.
you something. Doesn't mean there isn't core principles that you should adhere to and core truths, but you got to be a reasonably, or not. A lot of people just choose, have personal biases, and if they see something that matches their bias, of course, straight away it's true, isn't it?
Right. People want to believe what they want to believe, right? This is why people blindly believe whatever politician on whatever side of the aisle they like the best, right?
There's saints and the opposite.
Yeah.
There's the people they believe are saints, and the people on the other side are demons, aren't they?
Right.
Which is ridiculous, because there's demons and saints in all of us, isn't it?
Yep.
Well, we become very philosophical.
It's like hot in here.
Right. On to the next story. What's new in WordPress 5.3? New blocks, new APIs, improve admin. Do you want to start this one off, Joe?
Yeah, so I've installed 5.3, the release candidate, on one of my websites, goodhousemedia.com, which is really just like an informational site, so there's not a whole lot going on over there. And I really like what I saw. I didn't read the release notes or anything like that. I know 2020 is the default theme. I think that's really beautiful. I'm a huge fan of Anders Naren. But I also noticed going in that there have been really great improvements to the block editor, right? The icons are a little bit better. They show up and they act a little bit more predictably than maybe they used to. And I haven't really run it through the ringer, but the difference between using the block editor in 5.2 and 5.3 is noticeably more enjoyable. So the team continues to do really great work over there.
Yeah, I think it's coming on. What do you reckon, Sallie?
I've been using the Gutenberg plugin on some of the sites, so I've seen some of those features starting to come in. The group blocks, which is certainly a handy feature, because it is. You often put them together in a group, and then you say, no, actually, I want them to be up on the top of the page, and that kind of thing. I like Anders Noren's work. I hate the color scheme, the default color scheme for 2020. It just, like, I really dislike it. So it's like, I'm going to have to play with that and change the colors and then see what I think of it, because it blocks my opinions. A bunch of the other sort of more subtle stuff is kind of interesting, like the changes to the site health, the changes to the image uploading, sizing issues, and there's and the ability to register and unregister block styles in PHP is always, something good for me, because my JavaScript is still terrible. So, there's quite a bit that is going on in there, some of which will not be immediately noticeable to people, some of which will be. I mean, the fact that they're improving the color contrast in the site admin is something that, all of us will notice, and some people will really benefit from substantially. The resuming uploads, rotating images. I don't know if anybody ever dealt with, especially several years ago, like if you uploaded something from a phone, it was always rotated the wrong way.
Yeah, that's right. That's super weird.
Right. And so various kinds of, little date, time zone things. The ARIA current attribute for menus, so that, like, within the admin and elsewhere, that you can, like, actually, like, tell where you are and whether something is pointing to the page that you're on. There's like the rel UGC for a user-generated content item. I don't know how many people that's going to matter to, but it's, it's kind of interesting, some of these little bits and pieces. So yeah, I think it's, it's bringing in a lot of good stuff, that there will continue to be improvements as time goes on. It doesn't sound like there's likely to be a bunch of things where you'd need to worry that stuff will break, but still always good to test this on your staging site first. Before you make it live, especially if you have a site with any kind of older stuff on it.
Even the cat agrees. All right, I think we could dump the last story and this go into...
We'll have to wait for Spencer. We can't talk about robots without Spencer.
No, they can't really. He posted it, so you can talk about it next week if I add it. Let's go on for our recommendation. My recommendation is Mailcare. I've been using on my client websites, my supported sites. I've been using a combination of different products. And then I decided to drop that and go to Mailcare. And we're basically implementing it on all the sites that we've been support slowly over the past 3 weeks.
So what exactly is it?
It's a security backup plugin. It's the people under Blog Vault. And it's a security scanning and hardening plugin with some other features. And it's a service as well. And we've been implementing it over the past 3 weeks, and I've been highly impressed. So if you're looking for a service that helps you with backup, security scanning, and hardening your website, I would recommend you go over to Mailcare and have a look at what they've got to offer. Now, Joe, have you got anything you want to recommend or you found interesting that you want to tell the listeners of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. I dropped a link in the chat already. It is a Netflix documentary called Inside Bill's Brain, Decoding Bill Gates. I have always been a fan of Bill Gates. I think he's an incredibly interesting person.
He's a difficult person to read, you would want to play poker with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's like insanely smart. Like he reads like 150 words a minute or something like that.
Always think he is, and or he thinks he is. But he's one of these people that's about three in a chess game. He's 4 steps in front of you already every time, isn't he?
Yeah, for sure. And so this documentary on Netflix, it's a 3-part documentary that breaks down the life of Bill Gates and kind of pits it against his philanthropy, right? So like in the first episode, he talks about better sanitation. In the second episode, they talk a little bit about his philanthropy with polio. And the third part, they talk about climate change. I think it's really well done. Again, Bill Gates is an admirable person. I think that he's putting his efforts towards a lot of the right things. And one of my big takeaways, like right after the first episode into the intro of the second episode, is it made me realize like how lucky I am to grow up in the United States. And not because of like my lot in life or anything like that, because there are half of the world doesn't have clean sanitation or waste management, right? Polio still exists in parts of the world. And polio is like that thing that FDR had to me, right? So I think that it made me realize how lucky I am, but it also made me realize the monumental type of work that Bill Gates is throwing his weight and his brain power behind.
Yep, that sounds interesting. Sallie, got anything you want to recommend to this?
Oh gosh, I've actually encountered a bunch of interesting toys this week. So one I'm going to drop in here is called deepimage.ai. It's for enhancing photos. So I heard about this just at a time when I needed to use some hero images on a client site, but the photos they gave me were already not very good and not sized appropriately. And it helps upsize photos without losing your crispness. So it did a pretty good job.
So they don't all go fadey and pixelized.
Right. So they don't pixelate so much. But also discovered, there's a there's a tool called Clippy for editing clip paths and creating shapes. There's a bunch of neat stuff in the Firefox dev tools that I hadn't seen before, including the shape path editor and the font editor and the identify inactive CSS tool.
Wow, I have to go have a moozy there. Oh dear, yes, all these tools. If only there was enough time, was there, Sally?
Oh yeah, there is never enough time to discover everything that's going on, and if we wanted to be in a field we could keep up with, we should not have chosen technology.
That's true. Well, panel, I've got to say, for a small panel, I think we've done a great job, actually. I'll give you top marks. I think we've had some intelligent discussion, apart from me. And I guarantee no intelligence to my listeners and viewers. I only promise to try and get a decent panel with some interesting stories. I guarantee nothing that comes out of my mouth. But I think we've done a great job. Sallie, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
You can find me at WPFangirl.com. I am at Sallie Goetsch on Twitter. And if you are interested in learning how to speak, we're doing the speaker training workshop at our meetup on Sunday. And you can still find us at meetup.com.
Do you have a cat website?
I don't have a website for the cats, although my Instagram is full of cat pictures.
All right, because they are stars, aren't they? Joe, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
I think the best place to kind of see what I'm up to is casabona.org. You can find my podcast and my courses over there. And I am Jay Casabona on most social networks. And I've been really heavy into Instagram stories lately. So I'm going to try to do a bit more of that moving forward.
Yeah, and thanks for joining the panel. You've really contributed a lot so far.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that, Joe. We'll be back next week with hopefully a slightly larger panel. But on the other hand, some of these smaller panels, I find it a more intimate discussion, really. But there we go. I thought we had a good chat this week. We'll be back next week with great WordPress internet news stories and my self-opinionated views as well. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
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 Where's my? There we go.